Hi, my name is Russ. I was born in 1970, and that makes me a proud member of the greatest generation, Generation X. Seeing so much awesome content out there, Gen X content, on TikTok, I decided it's time to join in on the fun. Hey, shout out first to my favorite Gen X creators on TikTok, Kelly Mano, John Catrides, and Slim Sherry. If you are Gen X and you're not following them, it is time you do so. They are the best. Hey, so one part of growing up as a Gen X kid in the 1970s that I don't think gets enough due is how we were introduced to, or should I say rather, forced to listen to, the music of the era. You see, music back then wasn't tailored to kids. Remember, we kids were supposed to be seen and not heard. We were forgotten. We were left to our own devices, basically raised ourselves. So you can be damn sure that the music industry didn't care about us either. Music was made for our parents. Our parents who would buy vinyl records of what they liked, and they would play them on that one giant stereo, that piece of furniture that every house had back then with the turntable and the huge speakers on the side. With a top folded down, and it basically became like a giant end table with picture frames and vases on top of it. Well, when we weren't locked out of the house, we kids were forced to listen to those records your parents played on those giant pieces of furniture. And, we didn't have our own stereos. We didn't have our own record players like we do today. We didn't even have our own radios. Remember, the Walkman wasn't even invented until 1979. So the records our parents listened to were mostly what was nostalgic to them. 50s and 60s music, Elvis, the Beatles, sometimes like super lame stuff like Perry Como. Luckily we were outside almost all the time because we were supposed to be, and we were locked out of the house, and we could escape then from having to listen to that stuff. But there was one place where we could not escape: the car. So we Gen X kids growing up in the 70s know that our parents didn't really want us around. But there were times when they had to take us places. They had to take us places in the car, sometimes over long distances, like to a family get-together where, once you get there, they'd be able to just dump you off with your cousins so they wouldn't have to interact with you, or holidays, or family vacations, right? Felt at least once a year, sometimes they felt they had to owe us some of their time, so they took us on vacation. So you're stuck in the car with your siblings and your parents. And hell, if you're going to get to choose what's on the radio, you're not going to get to do anything like that. Your father would say, hey, when you make the car payments, you can choose what's going to be on the radio, right? So you're in the back seat, and remember, there's no cell phones, there's no tablets, there's no personal radios, there's no Walkman with headphones where you could drown everything out. So you just sat there in your own thoughts, or you fought with your siblings because they were annoying you, or you tried to entertain yourselves with games like I Spy. You remember that? I spy with my little eye something round and red. Oh, wait a minute. That was actually your mom's face from swelling with anger, turning around and yelling at you to shut the hell up because your father was trying to concentrate on the road and you were being a nuisance. Anyway, if you were lucky, you had one of those station wagons, with the backward facing rear seat, right? Because then you could just sit there and stick your tongue out at the drivers behind you as they were following you on the road. But then your mom would turn the radio on. Now, you're forced to listen to whatever they decided to listen to, but they didn't have their record player in the car to play their golden oldies, right? You got to hear new stuff. You got to hear what was popular at the time. That's at least if they didn't turn on some talk show on AM radio. But occasionally, even though that music wasn't really written for your ears or for a young person's taste at all, you would hear something great. You would hear something you found so awesome that you would actually shut up. You'd stop fighting. You'd stop playing games. You would just take it in. And these are the songs that we Gen X kids from the 70s still have somewhere in the back of our heads today. While we can sometimes hear these songs on like a Sirius XM channel, like 70s on 7 or Yacht Rock. That's a good one, by the way. There are sadly many amazing songs from this time period that you just don't hear anymore. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play some of these songs for you. I'm going to share some of the many mostly forgotten songs from the 70s Gen X era and remind you of those long car rides where you probably first heard them. So follow me and let's get started on getting some reminiscing of the 70s songs and their best music that is pretty much forgotten today.